Welcome to Impact Makers Radio, helping you to find jargon-free information before choosing a professional to help solve your problems and live the life you love. And here's your host, Stewart Andrew Alexander.
Hi and welcome everybody to another Let's Talk Divorce conversation. And during this segment of the show, ladies and gentlemen, I have certified financial planner and certified divorce financial analyst, JoAnn C. Little, and she's the owner of Divorce Help, calling in all the way from sunny San Diego in California. Now, JoAnn, who has a wealth of experience in the area of divorce mediation with a special emphasis on the financial division of assets and debts, will be talking to you today about preparing for divorce. Now, that sounds like a very interesting topic. So if you are one of the many people who may find themselves in the position where you're anticipating a lifestyle change, where you may be contemplating divorce, or maybe even going through divorce, or simply seeking jargon-free information surrounding your current divorce-related situation, then you might just want to take a break, grab yourself a notepad and pen, and get ready to take some copious notes as we listen in to what JoAnn has to share with us today. So let's not keep her waiting a moment longer. She's a very busy lady. Welcome to the show, JoAnn.
Thank you very much, Stuart.
You are so welcome. I'm really excited to have you on the show today, JoAnn. If you could just see me, I'm sat here with a big smile across my face because I know you've got such great things to share with our listeners today. So with that said, let's just take care of some formalities at first. It goes without saying that anything that you're going to share with us today is not legal advice or legal assistance. It's purely for the purpose of disseminating information. Now, could you just take a moment just to expand on that in your own words, please, JoAnn, so that everybody knows exactly what we're doing today?
Yes, I was invited here today to talk a little bit about preparing for divorce, some tips to help people navigate through this very difficult and challenging time. The information is of a general nature and may not pertain to your particular situation, but there will be resources that we will give you at the end of this for more information and more help should you choose to go that direction.
Thank you for sharing that with us, JoAnn. So please, just go ahead and tell us about Divorce Help, the people who you serve, and the kinds of situations that they find themselves in when they reach out to you for your help. Sure.
As most of the stories we hear about people who have gone into businesses that they're passionate about, it's usually evoked by a personal experience. And so was mine. In 2006, I went through my own divorce. And just like when you're looking for a new car, say a white Prius, all of a sudden you look around and there's lots of white Priuses in your sight of vision.
So true.
So as I was going through my divorce, I found family members, co-workers, friends going through the same thing. And I found that for a lot of those people, their experiences were extremely challenging and created even more wounds and conflict that had already been witnessed by the process, going through the process. You would ask somebody, "Hi, how are you? Haven't seen you in a while." And they'd be like, "Well, I'm fine. I'm going through a divorce, ... The next hour about how awful their attorney was, how awful their spouse was, how their children were acting up, so forth and so on. As I was going through my own divorce, I learned about a process called collaborative divorce. And at that time, my background is financial. I was with Allstate Financial at the time, running the brokerage operations for Southern California. And I decided that being a CDFA, a Certified Divorce Financial Analyst, would be my next career step. I had the background and experience being in the financial services industry now over 30 years. And I decided that we needed a better way. We needed a better way for people to transition through divorce or legal separation, which, as most people know, happens to over 50% of the first marriages, and strangely enough, even a higher percentage of second marriages. And we here in the United States are very good at beginnings. We have big, wonderful, lush, fun, joyous weddings. And for most people, the ending of those unions is not the same. So I wanted to look at creating a forum where individuals could get advice and expertise in the areas needed, in the amount needed, but work together as a team, because especially for those families who have children, you're always going to be a family in some way. There's going to be graduation, births, weddings, things of that nature. And to have an semblance of a relationship, to be able to show up for your children, to show up for your family, is really important. You know, we love this person once enough to marry them, maybe even have children with them. Why does this ending have to be so awful in most cases, both emotionally as well as financially?
Okay, JoAnn, so when you think about it, both you, I, and anybody else who happens to be listening right now, we all know that being prepared for the unexpected outcomes in any area of life is key. However, what are some of the advantages of being prepared for divorce?
So when we're in relationship, whether it be personal relationship or business relationship, we assume a role. And we're in relationship because we're trying to benefit by each other's strengths. Well, often I find divorce comes down to a very financial decision, right? Of course, we have our children and everything else that goes along with it. But at the end of the day, we're splitting up our finances. And the old saying, which may sound corny to some, but is very relevant in my opinion, information is power. So when you are not informed, you don't know what you have. You don't know where the money is going. You go into fear. And the acronym for fear, as some people may know who've done any level of therapy, which I've done a lot in my life to try to grow, is false expectations of appearing real.
Exactly.
Right. So one of the biggest tips that I talk about in the workshop that I do is becoming knowledgeable of your financial community. What do you have? What's in your checking? What's in your saving? What's on your charge card? What are your names attached to? Doing a simple credit report that's free once per year can tell you where your name appears and who it appears with. Most things are online now. If you're married in the state of California, in any case, you can get that information on 401k plans, IRA plans. So being prepared, knowing what's on the table is very, very important. And I always tell people, even if you don't get divorced, knowing what you have, suppose somebody passes away. You know, we all kind of run on a track of, if we don't like the thought of it, let's sweep it under the rug and deal with it later. And dealing with that type of stuff later, in the midst of a divorce in particular, since we're on that topic today, is very tenuous, because people will get angry, they will start changing passwords, things of that nature. Not to say that that can't be undone, but right now, even if you're not in a state of divorce thinking, get yourself prepared, learn what you have, what your spouse has, what your community looks like, and make a simple spreadsheet or a balance sheet, and that will make you feel better right away, regardless of whether you go through the process or not.
So what's one of the biggest myths out there when it comes to preparing for divorce then, JoAnn?
Well, you know, I work with a lot of family law attorneys. They work with me in my mediation practice because divorce is a legal activity, right? So I feel that we do need an attorney there, but my attorneys are all neutral. I think a lot of people, as soon as somebody mentions divorce or asks for a divorce, the first thing they do is run out, put a $10,000 retainer down on an attorney, and hope that that attorney gets them everything that they want. And unfortunately, you can fight for anything, but at the end of the day, there are some very clear lines.
Yeah, I mean, it's really strange how that myth is so apparent out there. Is when I watch a lot of TV, I see, you see these Hollywood productions with judges that we won't mention here. So, and it just seems to perpetuate that whole perception that one needs to dog it out and have a bulldog attorney. Why do you think that's the case then, JoAnn?
Well, I think it goes back to that dirty 4-letter word of fear. Oh my God, I had a friend and they got divorced, and he or she lost everything, and he or she is paying, $40,000 a month in spousal support, or he or she lost their children, right? So we hear this secondhand from people, and who knows what it really started out to be in some cases, or what the details were behind this particular situation, and it feeds our fear. And then we turn to the most obvious or current belief, right? I mean, what is a belief that if you go to a legal professional, that they're going to get you everything you want, and the more they cost, probably the better they are? Where did that belief come from? Somebody said that, thought that, did that. That's one of the reasons I formed Divorce Help, was to change that belief that no, if we're going to end this union, if we're going to end this marriage, then we're going to work at it together. We're going to look at our family. We're going to look at what we've built, and we're going to try to the best of our ability with the expertise that I have in the financial services industry over 30 years, as well as the insight to be able to look at a balance sheet of a community and say, well, we could do it this way or we could do it that way, alongside an attorney who's saying, if we do it this way, here's what we need to write in your agreement. If we do it that way, here's the pros, here's the cons. We can get extremely creative in preserving the assets, sharing the assets, instead of slicing and dicing everything down the middle. That's the new belief that people need to start paying attention to. People tend to think, Stewart, that divorce is for people who don't have conflict. Well, guess what? Everybody who's getting divorced has conflict, right? If you are willing, if you reframe your mind and say, okay, he cheated, she lied, whatever the case may be, we're human beings. All of this happens. Every single divorce, there's something going on. Could have to do with money, could have to do with parenting, could have to do with other people, could have to do with money, but there's always something going on. It's like, okay, here we are. We are here now. What's the next step? We're not going to live together as a unit anymore. Okay, how do we take this? Let's look at this as a business partnership, and let's not ignore those emotions, right? Because we can't ignore those emotions, because we'll push them down and then we'll get sick. But let's treat them differently. Let's put them aside from this process, and we're going to treat them, we're going to pay attention to them, but we're not going to bring them into the negotiation. Because once we start bringing emotions into negotiation, I've had people have restraining orders over bonsai pots.
Well, JoAnn, both you and I know that one can go online and perform research over any given topic and eventually come up with a perceived reality of what one believes to be true. However, quite often, that perceived truth is quite often a misconception. So, based on that, then, JoAnn, in your experience, what are some of the common misconceptions around your industry as a whole?
Well, and again, I keep coming back to California because that's the state that we do divorce in, and each state has its own, laws, if you will, when it comes to divorce and community property versus separate property versus equitable property. So the thing about where I work and what I do is that we work in a community property state. And for the most part, there are always exceptions to the rule. It's very clear. And so when people wake up and go to this attorney because they got my friend 90% of everything. That's odd. That's not true, because how do you get something more than the law abides for or allows for, if you will? And so people tend to think they can get more than their fair share. I think that's a very common misconception. And, unfortunately, there's only one community pie, and that gets split in half. Now, the areas that are gray are sole and separate property, quasi-property, so partial, sole and separate, partial community, and spousal support. And there's gray areas, and there are different outcomes based on different situations, based on different arguments, potentially based on different judges if it gets that far. So those areas can sort of be all over the map, but there are a lot of areas that they just are what they are. And what I always tell my clients is if someone gets more than their fair share, which of course is sort of a loaded term when we say fair share or even equitable, but if they do, you can bet that that other person at some point is going to come back and seek revenge or seek a remedy to that. So do you want to be looking over your shoulder your whole life, or do you want to say, okay, half is not fun? You know, I've been through a divorce myself. I could have been, in a very different situation now if I didn't have to split everything. But I'm happy, and I started over. And that's another thing is people feel like their lives are going to be devastated and they're never going to be happy again. And I could tell you that most people that come to my workshop, they listen to the information, they get knowledgeable, they feel probably 40 to 50% better from sitting in there for 3 hours. And then when you finally make the decision that you need to make for yourself, and I don't condone divorce because I loved being married, I just got engaged, so I am a huge proponent of relationship and love. Yeah. But if it's not right for you and you're unhappy and you can't treat that other person with love and respect, then you will be happier, even if you're alone.
So, JoAnn, you already touched on some of the fears that you come across on a regular basis, and I'm sure there are so many more. So could you just please go ahead and share just one more of your clients' most common fears about getting themselves ready for the divorce process?
Their children. Mostly minor children because, of course, they're still dependent and they're still involved in day-to-day. But children in general. Children bounce back. Children are, because of their ages, they tend to be selfish in their nature, and that's what they're supposed to be, right? They want to know that their life is going to be the same. They'll go see their friends, their school, their room, whatever. So most people are very in fear about their children and if their children are going to do well or, even survive the process. And they'll do things that they think are best for the children without even consulting the children, assuming the children are of an age where they can be consulted, which usually results in a young teen, right? So children who are very young, infants, children, 6, 7 years and below, adapt extremely well to households. The one single factor that is going to make the biggest difference in the way people's children react to a divorce is the people themselves. If they treat each other respectfully, if they have agreements in place that they respect, and they put the children first, the children will do very well. When the children don't do well is when they fight and they say, your father did this, your mother did this, and they pit the kids against, oh, who's your father's new girlfriend? Who's your mother's new boyfriend? Oh, your father took you to McDonald's. He's poisoning you. Oh, your mother took you here. She's spending all the child support money on, when that kind of stuff happens, the children don't do well because they're conflicted. They love both parents, regardless of how each parent sees each other. And when the parents cut each other down or use the children unknowingly, usually nobody wants to really hurt their children, but that's called alienation. And in my process, I use a parenting specialist to work with my couples to develop a plan that's age appropriate and to keep them from doing those things that they may not think is any big deal. I've had a lot of good people and I've heard a lot of stories, and I know these people and they are good people. But what they've done and said to their children about their exes, it's crazy. It's crazy.
And that can only underpin what you just shared with us about, the children being essentially a ping pong ball where they're being tossed back and forth between the mother and the father. Because myself, I'm a child of divorce. When my parents went through the whole divorce procedure before that, it was quite volatile. There was a lot of fighting, there was a lot of conflict, and all of that took place in front of me. And as a young child, I obviously didn't have the know-how, I didn't have the resources to process all of that, and I ended up carrying the guilt of my parents' breakup and all the problems that were playing out in front of me. I carried that on my young shoulders, and I ended up carrying that throughout all of my school years as a teenager, as a young man, on the times when I was in the military, and all the way up till in my mid-40s. I'm now in my mid-50s, but it took so long for me to actually become aware of the impact that the conflict that took place in front of me had on me as a human being. And it's also the catalyst for me creating the show Impact Makers Radio, where I invite divorce professionals like yourself to come on and speak to people who may find themselves in that position where there is conflict and there are children involved, in the hope that they do take these tips and these insights on board and approach the way how they communicate in front of their children from a different perspective. Because as both you and I know, and what a lot of divorcing couples may not be aware of, the children pick up on everything. You may try to hide it, but they pick up on every single nuance. I remember everything today, and I'm 56 years old at this current time, and I remember everything in detail what happened. I remember everything my mom said against my dad. I remember everything my dad said against my mom. I remember all the fights. I remember the blood stains on the walls and on the back of the heater and all of these things that play out. So I would just like to underpin, what you just said, because regardless of what has happened between you, and you may have every right to feel angry with your partner, maybe you've been cheated on, whatever the case may be, you have to put those children first. You have to love your children more than you hate yourselves. And that's what I'd like to say. So I'm so glad that you brought that point up and just kind of give me the opportunity to underpin it, because it's a really important point. So what do you think about that then, JoAnn?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure that your memories are very similar to other people who've been through that experience, and to be able to talk about those, to bring those up, to heal. A lot of people push unpleasant and uncomfortable things down, and they manifest into to really ugly diseases and behavioral traits. We are human beings. We are imperfect. I've done a lot of spiritual work as well that has led me to this particular profession. And so part of our process in life is to learn and heal and then to share with others. And so your story, just the impact of your story, there's probably hundreds, maybe thousands of people who will listen to this interview and go, oh shit, man, Stewart just admitted.
Yeah.
I feel the same way. Wow, yeah. I'm not a freak. I can, you know what I mean? And
exactly.
But history, we heard this term, repeats itself. And so if we can't harness that and learn from it and identify it, and as you did, it's funny when you were talking about, and I thought that's where he got the name from, and as I said, it's usually through our own personal experiences. If we can own them, if we can, admit to them, and then we want to make it better. We want to change it. And there's nothing more. It's like, for a long time, I ran brokerage programs for large institutions like banks and insurance companies and credit unions. And I was a broker at one time. I was a financial planner. So I knew the people that I was overseeing and helping and managing. I knew what it was like to be one of those people. And you know what it was like to be a child of divorce, right? Now, I lost my mom at a young age, so I have a lot of abandonment stuff going on, which is very similar.
Exactly. I just really hope just to give what I call those invisible voices a voice, and those invisible voices are the children of divorce. So I'm so glad that you come onto the show to share your experience with the listeners. So moving on then, JoAnn, what's one perceived obstacle that you often come across which may be preventing people from seeking the help of a professional like yourself?
Well, I think that what I see a lot of times, because I call it an initial consultation. So it's a 30-minute complimentary consultation, ideally with both parties, to, hear about their situation and then talk to them about how I can help them. And in relationships, we tend to, again, assume those roles. So if you and I are in a relationship, Stewart, and you said, well, how about we go on vacation here, JoAnn? And I say, no, I don't think so. I think we'll go here. How about we buy this car? No, I think we'll buy that car. Right after a while, that becomes our norm, and so at some point I see people, and a lot of them are in the workshops that I do on a monthly basis, And in the workshops, we ask them, how did you hear? What stage are you in? And the majority of people are contemplating, right? They're still under the covers. Maybe nobody knows. Well, everybody knows. If you're thinking about divorce, your spouse is thinking about divorce. I can almost guarantee you, right? So it's like, he won't let me. He won't divorce, or she won't divorce. And then, of course, there's the fear of, well, I've been married 30 years. Who will I be? It's like losing your job. I am a certified financial planner and I work for Allstate. And then all of a sudden I don't work for Allstate anymore. Who am I? Or when your children grow, I was a mom. Well, your mom, how old are your children? 28, okay, you're still a mom, but you know what I mean? And so it's the fear of change is what I would say in a nutshell, that holds people back, because they may not be very happy with what they've got, but they know what they've got. And the fear of trying something new, going someplace different, weeding through everything they have to weed through is overwhelming. And people in general, I've found, are very insecure. And we as human beings, and I was always sort of fascinated by the term self-esteem and self-confidence. And I think for a long time I blurred those lines. But self-confidence basically is your ability in knowing you can do something. I can ride my bike from San Francisco to LA. I am self-confident about it. But the loser I am with the extra 5 pounds I'm carrying around, my self-esteem is not very strong in doing that, right? So we, as human beings, unfortunately, tend to have very low self-esteem in general. And some of us who are very successful in what we do, and you've probably heard, or our audience has heard interviews with actors in particular, who talk about how they struggled. One of the things that just comes to mind is the new documentary Free Solo. And Alex had lived on 88 cents a day and climbed the side of mountains, and then the next thing you know, he's on the cover of National Geographic, So we all have been there, but it's going to be that self-confidence that brings us to that next level. And then once we get that self-confidence going on, then we could start working on the self-esteem. So I think our self-esteem says, you can't do that. You're not strong enough. You won't make it on your own. Nobody else will love you, et cetera, et cetera.
So keeping your client's confidentiality in mind, JoAnn, could you just please share an example that really sums up how you've been able to help somebody to succeed in getting the transformation that they were looking for when they initially reached out to you for your help?
So I often liken my services to like a professional hiking guide. And I tell people, I'm not going to carry you up the mountain. You're going to walk up the mountain. But I've been up the mountain many times. And if you start to walk on the wrong path, I will bring you back. If the weather starts to get foul, I have protection. If you run out of food and water, I have supplies. And I'm going to lead you up the mountain, but you're going to walk up that mountain. Now, that journey up the mountain takes many forms, but generally speaking, people come in, they're afraid. Maybe both of them are afraid. They come in together. They've made the decision together. They're never on the same page. Somebody's more anxious, somebody's less anxious, but they're both very afraid. And the structure is important. It's sort of like going over a large bridge, like maybe the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, California. If there weren't side rails on the bridge, not very many people would go over that bridge. But there are good side rails. There are clearly marked lanes. So you have the confidence and the courage to go over that bridge. So that's the way that I paint the picture, because every situation's different. I've done $15 million divorces in mediation that would have cost clients well into the six figures in just a normal, even if they cooperated, just because of the complexity and the gravity of their assets, having to convert from other countries, et cetera, et cetera. So it doesn't really matter what your situation looks like. Within the right framework, I'm going to help you get up that mountain and get over the bridge, and we have the resources to do that. And those resources can be the minimal flat fee engagement resources that actually most people find they can get through well, or it can be an expanded scope where we have to bring in other professionals to maybe evaluate businesses or do qualified domestic relations orders to split retirement plans. But the fact of the matter is, a climb or it's a bridge, and we have the structure to get you through it.
As a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, my guest today is certified financial planner and certified divorce financial analyst, JoAnn C. Little, who works with a special emphasis on the financial division of assets and debts. And today, her topic is preparing for divorce. Now, with that in mind, JoAnn, and for those people who are listening in right now, what's one of the most common pitfalls or even mistakes, so to speak, that they should be mindful of, irrespective of what kind of situation they currently find themselves in?
Well, what we try to do with our clients is, the first thing is we lay everything out on the table. So you can't negotiate on what you doubt or don't know or don't understand is there. So it's really important that we do that step first. Everybody wants to get to the end. Everybody wants, I want this and I want to keep that and I want 90% of my children. So, it's really important to follow a process and get everything out on the table so it can be clarified and classified regarding what type of asset or debt it is. Is it community? Is it quasi, meaning maybe part of it was sold separate, part of it was community? Or is it some type of a gift or an inheritance? What type of records do we have? Statements do we have? So we have to do that first, and everybody wants to know, what am I going to get? What's going to happen? But we have to take it in steps, or else we won't have success. And then the second thing is once we know what everything is, we know what we're negotiating on, and we've verified incomes, we've looked at tax returns, and we go into our negotiation session with our neutral attorney, and the neutral attorney tells you this home is community property, meaning you get half, Stewart, and you get half, JoAnn. And either we can sell the home or somebody can buy the other party out. And if you're saying, well, that's not good for me, I want the whole home, it's like, good luck, right? You have to be open, and you have to understand that we're putting everything in the columns, and then you get this much of that column and this much of that column. And when you're in mediation, you have the flexibility and the ability to sort of move those columns around. Again, we always have the neutral attorney there, so that attorney is able to help you understand from a legal standpoint how you can move those columns around. And I'm there to help you understand from a financial standpoint, a taxation standpoint, an estate planning standpoint, how you can move those columns around. And the same thing with income. Spousal support or child support is dependent upon clarifying and classifying incomes, looking at percentages of custody, looking at duration of marriage, looking at needs, looking at wants, looking at ability to pay, things of that nature. So when people want to jump ahead to something, or they want more than what is a very clear legal share, they're setting themselves up for trouble.
So, JoAnn, nobody ever really wakes up one morning and says, I'm just going to be a CDFA, or I'm going to be a certified financial advisor. I'm going to help people with their divorce and prepare them for divorce. No, that's not the reality. And I'm sure that's not the case with you. I'm sure that the path to where you find yourself today was a long, meandering path which got you to where you are today. So with that said, what was it that inspired you or even led you to do what you do and to help the kinds of people you work with today?
So I'm one of those people who can never stop. There was a really sweet point of my life where my dad came to live with us, and it was really enriching in many ways, aside from the topic of the conversation. But every once in a while, he'd find me sitting on the couch, and he would jokingly look over in disbelief and say, "You're actually sitting on the couch." But I have both a mental and a physical zest for life, and I feel really fortunate that I am still going as strong as I am. But I grew up on the East Coast. I started college. I went to a secretarial charm school. I worked on Wall Street. And in a very short period of time, I progressed my career greatly, even at a very young age, and then relocated to the West Coast and finished up schooling, and really had enjoyed marketing and thought I was going to go into the marketing world, if you will. but found myself actually getting involved in the financial world, first starting out doing tax-deferred annuities for school teachers and hospitals, and really loving that and enjoying helping people understand their money and helping them save. But then, of course, it was like, well, what about my mutual funds and stocks and bonds? Oh, what about that? So let's get our licenses. Let's get our CFP. And then about the same time, the banks were opening up where they were bringing in financial planning services, and now I was working with groups and educating groups and became a manager. And I just really enjoyed, finances, money is not everything in life, and we've seen many documentaries talking about how over a certain amount of money, it doesn't bring happiness. However, most people are very fearful and are uncomfortable with finances. And as you know, and I know, getting to this point in our lives and creating what we've created gives us choices and options. So the career of helping people manage their money has been very rewarding. I've seen people get to points as a result of advice and dealing with them over the years. So I've seen the fruits of my labors, if you will. And then, as I mentioned early in the call, there were a lot of things going on in the financial services industry in the early 2000s that were making me feel like maybe I didn't want to be a part of this industry anymore. And that was about the same time that divorce came up for me in the early 2000s. And it took me a while. I had young children, loved the family structure. But before I make a leap on anything, I usually do quite a bit of research and try to learn as much as I can and prepare myself as much as I can for what's coming. And so I sought out the different ways, the different options, and learned about something called collaborative divorce when I was working as a territorial manager for Allstate. And in the collaborative divorce process, there was a CDFA, a Certified Divorce Financial Analyst. And that person was 25 years in the business, was a CFP, had the licenses. I also arbitrate for the securities industry, which is it's a wonderful thing and very good for my credibility and my ethics. And I'm like, wow, this looks like the new horizon. This is a broken industry. I love it. Give me something broken. Don't give me something that I have to tweak. Every job I've ever gravitated to has been a job where things were sort of a mess. I love that. Let me try to make a difference here. And obviously, divorce is one of the most significant financial events that a couple will go through in their life. And so with my financial acumen, working with the other professionals I need to help people navigate through this in not just a one-dimensional manner. We're all human beings, right? And having sort of the spiritual side that I developed more as I was going through my own divorce, and being able to relate to people the same way when I was a sales manager, I could relate to my brokers because I'd been a broker. And I'm just so inspired by it. And it's like one of those things. It's like when I listened to the interview, Lance Armstrong interviewed Alex Honnold, the free solo guy. And the dude he just climbs and he loves it. And he puts his hand there and then the hand goes there. And that's the way I feel when I do my practice, is it just happens. And I'm listening to people and I can see, well, how about this or how about that? And it allows for creativity. And again, most of the time we complete people. And every once in a while, somebody will call me up and they'll say, I could have never made it through that without you. And that is like the best reward possible. But usually when you're going through a divorce with people, no much how much money you're saving them or how much good you're doing them because you're able to help somebody keep the house or whatever the case may be, at that point in time, they're not in the best frame of mind. They just want to get through this like a cancer treatment or something, right? So yeah, I'm just really passionate about what I do. I really care about my clients. And it's sort of like being a parent in a way, in that you have to be empathetic and you have to be compassionate, but you have to lay down the rules and you have to encourage them to follow the rules for their own good.
So let me ask you this then, JoAnn. When you think about all the people that you've helped to prepare for their divorce, on a deep down personal level, what does that actually give you? How does that make you feel when they come out on the other end and everything went as smoothly as it could have gone? What does that, what do you get from that?
Well, I'm I'm not a heart surgeon, I don't climb El Cap, but I really feel like I make a big difference in people's lives in light of what they're going through. I felt that way as a financial planner, although I feel that what I do now, because it's event-driven. When you're a financial planner and you talk to people about, well, why don't you do this or that or change this or that? Very arbitrary. There's no urgency usually. I mean, they could do it or they could not do it. And so a lot of times, people are masters at procrastinating on things, especially things that are important because, if they make a change and the change doesn't go well. So in doing divorce mediation, it's very event-driven, and so people have to be present. They have to participate. And I know what they're getting. I know what the other side would look like. And I really feel like it makes a big difference. And I'm probably somebody they're going to remember and hopefully at some point remember fondly, because I know sometimes when the other person is dragging the spouse in and they look at me, I am, the evil one because I'm orchestrating this. But they soon find that I'm not the evil one, and I love getting feedback from my clients down the line to say, I couldn't have done it without you. And then I'll get a referral and they'll say, so-and-so or such and such sent me and they said that you were amazing and they could have never got through it without you. And that, who doesn't want to hear that? That's what we do for. And that's where I'm at. And it gives me flexibility. I get to network with a lot of other professionals, which is wonderful. A lot of parenting people, attorneys, real estate people, mortgage refinance people. And I love what I do. I love what I do.
Excellent. This is going really, really well with our conversation today, JoAnn. So before we actually close out with our last question, what's the most important thing that people should consider before choosing a professional to help them prepare for their divorce and the financial division of assets and debts?
Yeah, well, going through a divorce and going through mediation is a pretty personal thing. When I, as a consumer, make a decision on a service or a product, one of the first things that I look at is the level of expertise. Who is this person? What have they done in their life? What's their background? So that, to me, is very, very important. Again, I am not an attorney, but I use family law attorneys in my process when we're doing negotiations for divorce. And so I personally feel that if somebody is going through a divorce and they're doing mediation, they need some legal presence in the mediation. So I personally would not go through mediation without having some type of neutral attorney input into the process. And then, of course, the other thing is structure, price, and success rate. I'm originally from the East Coast, and I like a good value for my money. When I seek a service or buy something, I don't mind spending money if it's worth it. I am personally, and if other people do this, it's absolutely fine because that's what makes the world go around. But I'm not going to buy a pair of jeans because they got somebody's name on the back and spend $300. I'm going to buy a pair of jeans because they look nice on me, they fit nice, they're well made. And that's the way I feel about myself. I present a quality product. I have vast expertise and experience in what I do, and the people that I choose to work in my model are of the same mind with credentials who are bonded and licensed. And so my clients are getting an exceptional value for the money. I do everything I possibly can to keep any costs down and to deliver to my clients the services that they need. They have skin in the game as well, right? Again, I am not the hiking guide who is going to get a wagon or a trolley car and put them in and put them up the mountain. They have to have some skin in the game. They have to get their arms in the process. And when I say arms in the process, like when I do my disclosures, they have to fill their disclosures in online. And that's great because when you actually do something, when you sit down, as opposed to handing people a bunch of statements and having them fill it in, you learn. You learn what's on the table. And then you question things. Well, I saw this statement and had this on it and that on it. And what does this mean? Right? You can't get that experience when you're handing over your stuff to somebody else. You have no clue what's going on. well, what does this mean on the statement? There was a withdrawal or a tax event, or I don't understand this on my taxes. My clients learn as they go through the process.
So, JoAnn, if someone feels that they want to know more about the very important task of getting themselves prepared for divorce, what would be the best way for them to get in touch with you, one, and more importantly, what will happen when they actually do? So if you could just paint the picture so they know there is absolutely no risk, that JoAnn is not going to use a baseball bat, hit them over the head and take all their money. Okay, so if you could just let them know exactly what your process is, so they know it's going to be okay to take the next step, please go ahead.
Sure. So the first thing that I'll describe is kind of what happens, and then I'll give you some contact information. So if somebody wants to learn about my process of divorce, I provide them with a 30-minute complimentary consultation to learn a little bit more about their situation, and then for me to share with them my mediation process, which talks about structure, guidelines, timelines, and costs. No legal or financial information is given at this session, and the optimal result of moving forward usually happens when both parties attend together, although I will have people come in separately and then later on the spouse will join, or I'll meet with them, or whatever the case may be. As a result of this, and I like this because if I'm going to do something as critical as get a divorce, I want to meet this person. I want to look in their eyes. I want to see where they work. I want to hear their philosophy. I want to understand what's going to happen to them if I sign on the dotted line. So I provide my clients with this complimentary consultation. If they're ready to move forward, I can then do their contract and do their preparation meeting, and I work in stages or steps. It's unlikely, meaning that I have probably close to a 90% success rate with finishing mediation with clients. I do lose an occasional one every once in a while, but in any case, I have a very high success ratio, but I do it in steps. So there are 4 different payments that are made. My divorce engagements are under $5,000 for both parties, which includes all of the court tasks, the marriage settlement agreement, professional time with an attorney, professional time with me, disclosures, the judgment packet. They never have to see the inside of a court. So that is made in 4 separate payments as we go through all the tasks. If for some reason somebody can't accomplish or can't move forward, they are not on the hook for the payment. So I explain all of this in the initial meeting. If a client is ready to get going, then I will do their contract, go over the contract with them, tell them what services that might be needed in addition to what I do. For instance, if they need a qualified domestic relations order, and that splits retirement assets without taxation, or they need a business valued or things like that, that would be outside of my fee. And so I kind of assess that. That's what I do in the initial consultation. If somebody wants to get in touch with me, they can go to my website, which is divorcehelpfamilylaw.com. They could take a look at my website, and there also is a initial consultation form on the website that they can book an appointment directly through that website. They can also call me at area code 619-483-1576. And I do a workshop called Second Saturday, and the website is secondSaturdaySanDiego.org. And so they can sign up. The seminars are once per month on the second Saturday each month, 3 hours, advice from a family law attorney, myself, parenting specialists, and other professionals. So that's a wonderful resource for people who want to understand the process, who want to see who I am, see who my team is. And that same phone number it can be used for the second Saturday, the 619-483-1576. I can work telephonically with some couples. Sometimes I have one of the parties who's moved. Even if both parties move, obviously, face-to-face is always nice when you're doing something as intimate as divorce mediation. And our offices are located in downtown San Diego. For those folks who may be local listening to us in the Symphony Tower building.
Perfect. Thank you for that, JoAnn. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. So again, as a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, we have been listening to Certified Financial Planner and Certified Divorce Financial Analyst, JoAnn C. Little. And JoAnn specializes in the financial division of assets and debts. So thank you so much for sharing so generously with us today, JoAnn. You have certainly demonstrated in the short amount of time that we've had today that you are a true educator, advocate, and trustworthy advisor for your client success. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Stewart. It was really a pleasure.
You are so welcome, my dear. And I'd also like to take a moment to say a big thank you to you. Yes, you, our listener. Without you, we wouldn't have anybody to speak to, and we'd be sat here twiddling our little thumbs. So thank you for taking the time out of your busy day and for joining us on, what I can only describe as a very insightful and informative discussion with one of the leading divorce professionals in the San Diego, California area today. Again, her name is JoAnn C. Little. Make sure you do check her out, look her up online, give her a call. She shared her phone number. Visit her website. There are some great resources on there. So whatever you do decide to do, ladies and gentlemen, I am absolutely sure that after listening to JoAnn today, you are going to be in a great place to start preparing for divorce. So that's it, folks. Again, my name is Stewart Andrew Alexander. I'm a long-lost distant relative of the British royal family, but they don't tell anybody, JoAnn. Can you imagine that? What are we going to do about that? Anyway, we're going to be back shortly with some more leading divorce professionals in this, our series of Let's Talk Divorce Conversations. So, until then, take care, have a great day, and we'll talk real soon.
Thank you for tuning in to Impact Makers Radio. To listen to all past, present and future industry thought leaders and trendsetters, visit us at impactmakersradio.com.